All right, so we've got some pretty big news to dive into today. You sent over some articles about this whole FBI shakeup.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's making headlines everywhere. Christopher Wray resigning as director, and then there's all this talk about Kash Patel potentially taking over.
Right.
It's not just like switching out one person for another, though, right?
Definitely not.
I mean, this could really change how the entire bureau works, maybe even have a ripple effect on the whole country.
What's really interesting is the timing of Wray's exit. He's not leaving right away.
Oh, so when is he actually stepping down?
It's set for January 20th, 2025,
Hmm.
President-elect Trump's inauguration day.
Okay, so not just any random Tuesday, then.
Nope.
Seems pretty strategic.
It is. By stepping down on inauguration day, Wray basically lets the new administration appoint their own FBI director from day one.
I see.
If he stayed for his full term, they'd have to wait years to make that change.
Ah, so this way they can start shaping the FBI right away.
Exactly.
And it sounds like the person they have in mind is Kash Patel.
It seems that way.
From what I've read, he's not exactly a neutral figure in all this, is he?
No, you're right. Patel was an aide to Congressman Devin Nunes, and he's been pretty vocal about his criticisms of the FBI.
Yeah, that's what I remember reading, too.
To really understand why this is causing such a stir, we need to look back a bit.
Yeah.
Choosing an FBI director has always been a delicate process.
How so?
Well, the Bureau is supposed to be independent, you know,
Right.
not swayed by politics. But when you have someone like Patel with his history, it makes people question if he can really be impartial.
Yeah, it's almost like imagine someone taking the helm of a ship after they've been saying it's leaky and poorly steered.
Exactly.
It doesn't exactly inspire confidence.
And to add to that, sources close to the situation say Patel is seen as very loyal to Trump.
So that raises even more concerns about whether the FBI can stay independent under his watch.
Absolutely.
So we've got a new administration eager to leave their mark, and a potential director who's been pretty critical of the FBI in the past. But where does Wray stand in all of this? I mean, he's not exactly fading into the background quietly.
No, not at all. In fact, in his resignation speech, he really emphasized the importance of the FBI's independence.
Oh, really?
He said that for the Bureau to be effective and maintain public trust, it needs to be free from any political pressure.
That's interesting given that Patel's name is being floated as his replacement.
Right. It's hard not to see it as a kind of warning.
Like he's concerned about what might happen if Patel takes over.
A lot of people are interpreting it that way, yes.
Okay, so Wray's words are being seen as a message directed at Patel and the incoming administration.
Yeah, but the question is, will Patel actually heed that message, or will he go in a different direction?
That is the big question, isn't it?
Mm.
Now, what about the public? How are people reacting to this potential shift in leadership? Is everyone on board with this change?
Public opinion seems pretty divided right now.
Okay, so what are people saying?
Well, you have some who see Patel as a chance for reform within the FBI.
They think he'll shake things up a bit.
Exactly. They believe he can make the FBI more efficient.
But on the other hand...
But on the other hand, you have a lot of people who are deeply worried about what they call politicization.
Okay, so politicization, that's a word we keep hearing. But what does that actually look like when it comes to the FBI?
Well, imagine an investigation into, say, the financial dealings of a political figure.
Okay.
If the FBI starts getting pressure to either speed up or slow down that investigation based on political motives, not just the facts.
Right.
That's what they mean by politicization.
That makes sense. So we have some folks who see Patel as a reformer and others who fear he'll bring politics into the mix. It's a real opportunity versus threat situation playing out here. But before we jump into what all this means for the FBI's future, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, Patel's past actions and why they're making people nervous. We need to understand what's driving this concern about his impartiality.
Right. And a key part of that is understanding his role as an aide to Congressman Nunes. Patel was really in the thick of things when it came to that whole investigation into the origins of the Russia probe back in 2016.
Right. That was huge news back then.
Yeah, it was a big deal. He and Nunes were very critical of how the FBI handled that whole thing. They claimed there was a bias against Trump from the very beginning.
I remember that.
They even released that memo alleging all sorts of surveillance abuses.
Yeah, that memo was controversial, to say the least.
To say the least. So this wasn't just Patel disagreeing with a few decisions here and there.
Right.
He was actively pushing the narrative that the FBI was acting improperly.
Okay, so it's more than just a difference of opinion. It
Yeah.
sounds like he was fundamentally questioning the FBI's motives and actions.
Exactly, and that's what's making people nervous now.
I can see why that would raise some red flags.
And it gets even trickier because some of the things Patel did during that time, like how he handled classified information, are now being scrutinized. So, yeah, it adds another layer of complexity to this whole question of whether he's really the right fit to lead the FBI.
This is starting to feel like a political thriller with all these twists and turns.
You kid it is.
But I think for our listener, the most important question is how could this actually affect the FBI's work moving forward?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Let's say Patel does become director. What are the biggest potential impacts?
Well, sources are saying there are a few key areas to keep an eye on. First, there's the issue of ongoing investigations.
Right.
Will Patel's leadership change their direction or scope?
Especially if those investigations involve people close to Trump.
That's a big concern.
Like hypothetically, let's say there's an investigation into a business deal that the president was involved in.
Right.
Could there be pressure on the FBI to handle it differently under Patel's leadership?
That's what worries people who are concerned about politicization. They're afraid that certain investigations might get sidelined while others get fast-tracked.
And those decisions would be based on political calculations rather than evidence.
Exactly.
That would be a major blow to the FBI's image as an impartial investigator.
A huge blow.
Yeah.
It would be like choosing which laws to enforce based on who's involved.
And that's not how it's supposed to work.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Then there's the question of how this leadership change could affect the FBI's relationships with other agencies.
Right, both here in the U.S. and internationally.
Yeah, these relationships are built on trust and cooperation.
So a major shift like this could really disrupt things.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. These agencies rely on each other for information and support.
Right.
The FBI might need to work with the CIA on a counterterrorism case or with foreign intelligence agencies to track down a cyber criminal.
If that trust is damaged, it could make everyone less effective.
Definitely. A lot of what the FBI does relies on smooth collaboration.
Right.
If other agencies start to question the FBI's motives or reliability under Patel, it could really hinder investigations and intelligence sharing.
This could even have national security implications, couldn't it?
It could. Our ability to respond to threats could be weakened.
This is getting pretty serious. We've talked about the potential impacts on investigations, interagency relationships, but there's another big piece of the puzzle, public trust.
That's a crucial one.
How could this change at the top affect how the average person views the FBI?
This might be the most important and longest-lasting impact.
Yeah.
The FBI needs public trust to function properly.
Why is that?
Well, people need to believe that the Bureau is acting fairly, not playing favorites.
Right.
That it's focused on upholding the law, not serving some political agenda.
Okay.
If that trust erodes, it becomes so much harder for the FBI to do its job.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about all the ways we rely on the FBI without even realizing it.
That's true.
I mean, they're the ones investigating cybercrime, protecting us from terrorism, going after corrupt officials.
Yeah.
If people start losing faith in them, it's like a crack in the foundation of our whole system.
That's a really good way to put it. If people stop believing that the FBI can be a fair and impartial enforcer of the law, it weakens the rule of law itself.
Wow.
People become less likely to cooperate with investigations, less likely to report crimes, and less likely to trust the justice system as a whole.
So it's not just about who's running the FBI.
No.
It's about the potential impact on our entire society.
Exactly. This is why this leadership change is such a huge deal.
It raises these fundamental questions about the balance of power, accountability, the role of law enforcement in a democratic society.
And those questions go way beyond just this one appointment. They're questions we need to keep asking ourselves as a society.
Okay, so we've covered some pretty heavy stuff here, but I don't want to leave our listener feeling overwhelmed.
Of course not.
We've talked about the potential impacts on investigations, relationships with other agencies, and public trust.
Right.
But I want to bring it back to you, the listener. What stands out to you as the biggest concern, or maybe the biggest opportunity? We've covered a lot of ground here. Ray's exit, Patel's background, all the potential ripple effects this could have on the FBI and even on public trust.
It's a lot to take in.
But I want to bring it back to you, the listener, for a minute and kind of make this personal.
Okay.
If you were an FBI agent right now, how would you feel about this change in leadership? What would be your biggest hope or maybe your biggest worry as you see Patel stepping into this role?
That's a really good question. I mean, imagine you've spent your whole career dedicated to upholding the law. You know,
Yeah.
being this impartial force for justice, and then your new boss comes in.
Right.
Someone who's publicly questioned the very institution you serve.
Yeah.
And there are all these concerns about his motives.
That'd be tough.
It would be a lot to process, for sure.
It's almost like finding out that the captain of your ship,
Yeah,
doesn't fully trust the crew or the course you've been on.
exactly.
You'd start to wonder, are we changing direction entirely?
Right.
Is my work even valued anymore?
And I think you'd see a mix of reactions within the FBI. Some agents might feel optimistic,
Yeah. Okay.
hoping Patel brings in some fresh perspectives, shakes up what they might see as an inefficient bureaucracy. But then others might feel demoralized, worried that their work will be undermined or politicized.
Yeah, I can see that. I bet there's also a sense of unease about how this affects the FBI's reputation.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, these agents put their lives on the line to maintain this image of integrity, and now that image is being debated publicly, tied up in all these political battles.
It's a difficult position to be in. Public perception is everything for law enforcement.
Right.
If people start doubting the FBI's fairness, they're less likely to cooperate with investigations.
Yeah.
Less likely to report crimes. They might even start to see the agency as illegitimate. And that makes an agent's job so much harder, regardless of how they personally feel about Patel.
That makes sense. But for our listener who maybe isn't an FBI agent, why should they care about all of this?
Because the work that the FBI does touches everyone's lives, even if we don't always realize it.
How so?
I mean, they're the ones investigating cyber attacks that could wipe out your bank account.
Right.
They're tracking down terrorists who threaten our safety.
Mm-hmm.
They're uncovering corruption that wastes taxpayer money.
Oh, okay.
The FBI's effectiveness has a direct impact on our security and well-being.
It's like that saying, justice delayed is justice denied.
Right.
But what happens if the FBI itself becomes the source of that delay or doubt?
It undermines justice for everyone.
Exactly. And that's why this whole leadership transition is so important. It's not just about politics.
No.
It's about the future of an institution that plays a vital role in upholding the rule of law
Absolutely.
and protecting our society.
We've given you a lot to think about today.
We have.
But here's a final thought I want to leave you with. Go beyond the headlines. Think about what you value most in law enforcement: fairness, effectiveness, accountability.
Yeah.
And then ask yourself, does this leadership change align with those values?
It's a question worth asking.
It is. The answer might surprise you.
Yeah.
And it's a conversation we need to keep having as a society.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but we encourage you to continue exploring these questions and keep the conversation going.